So welcome to the 8th session of the Africa Soft Power series, a summit focused on how Africa can harness its soft power to transform its trajectory. At Africa Soft Power, we believe that there are major lessons to be learned from behavior in the fashion and cosmetics industries that can be applied to help fuel wider growth across B2B and consumer sectors. And personally, I believe that finding the answers to the question of what African women consumers want is a key to unlocking future growth on the continent. That's our topic of today, rethinking the business of beauty. I'd like to take a quick minute to say thank you to our strategic partners and our media partners for supporting this project. And finally, I'm really happy to introduce our lead discussant for the day, Toyin Odulate. Toyin is founder and CEO of Olori Cosmetics, an African multi-brand personal and beauty care company, manufacturing, developing, and formulating world-class products for the African consumer. Olori is distributed across 100+ retail outlets in Nigeria and in 3 other major markets, Ghana, Kenya, and the UK. Before setting up Olori, Toyin was Regional Director, Anglophone West Africa for Danone, and before that, she was Senior Project Director, Middle East and Africa at L'Oreal. Toyin is a consumer goods subject matter expert in retail, distribution, supply chain, and cross-country regulatory management across key sub-Saharan African markets. Her company, Olori Cosmetics, is listed as one of 100 companies to inspire Africa in the London Stock Exchange Group 2019 report. Toyin, thank you so much for being here. Before we proceed, Obi, my co-convener, will say a few words.
Welcome, everybody. I'm really excited about this session today. And especially about the people on the panel. I really like to welcome old friends of mine who have been working in this space for a very long time. And it's just about, and I think today I'm really excited about connecting the worlds, about having all of us together on one panel at one time, talking about a global opportunity for all of us. Welcome. Over to you, dear.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me. Thank you to the Africa Soft Power series and project for putting this session together. I think it's, these are 2 really huge topics that we're trying to merge into one. So I would just crave the indulgence of our audience as we try to navigate the different topics across beauty and fashion. Both industries actually, deserve a dedicated panel or 2-hour-long conversation each, but we're going to try to merge it together and see what we can do. So I'm going to go ahead and read the bios of our distinguished panelists, and I'm going to start with Miss Eryca Freemantle. Eryca is a globally renowned makeup educator and researcher, a former makeup artist and advisor to London College of Fashion, UCL. She has worked with celebrities, mainstream brands, and leading world-renowned beauty institutions. Eryca is also the founder of EATOW, a platform which celebrates successful Black experts in beauty, fashion, entertainment, and the creative industry across the globe. She spent many years in Nigeria researching the beauty industry for the British government, sits on the board of Africa's leading makeup organization, Makeup Ghana, and is a beauty, business, and life coach ambassador for the Prince's Trust. She was recently appointed governor for prestigious UTC school in England. Eryca, welcome to the panel.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
The next person I'm going to introduce is Chid Liberty, who's joining us from the US. Chid is the founder of Liberty and Justice, Africa's first fair trade certified apparel manufacturer. He's also the CEO of Made in Africa, Inc., a technology-driven apparel trading company focused on sustainable manufacturing. Earlier this year, Afrexim Bank signed a term sheet with Made in Africa to provide the company with a $190 million facility to finance the acquisition of a major fabric holding company based in the Netherlands. In 2011, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, former president of Liberia, recognized Chid in her State of the Nation address, which is amazing, for his leadership in shaping trade policy and indigenous Liberian entrepreneurship. He's widely known as a groundbreaking innovator and has won numerous awards, including the 2018 Ashoka Fabric of Change Fellowship and CNA Foundation sponsored grant awarded to social entrepreneurs pursuing systemic change in retail supply chains. In addition to that, Chiz also worked on the first Black-owned global luxury group and Africa's leading textile manufacturing company. So we're going to be deep diving into that a little bit more. Thank you, Chid, for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Toyin. Thanks, Obi. Thanks, Nkiru.
The next person I'm going to introduce is Jameel Spencer, who's joining us from the New York area. Jameel is the founder and CEO of Writeful Place Agency, an agency that works with brands and personalities to create new narratives positioned to unlock underexploited revenue potential. Before Writeful Place, Jameel was division president, fashion and entertainment at Sequential Brands Group, a company that owns, manages, and licenses a large-scale and diversified portfolio of consumer brands across multiple industries in the United States. Previously president of the marketing and advertising division for Sean P. Diddy Combs' Bad Boy Worldwide Entertainment Group, which we all know. Jameel is considered one of the most successful hip hop marketers in the world. Jameel's past roles also include executive vice president, marketing at Iconics Brand Group, and chief marketing officer at Rockaware. Thank you, Jameel, for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Okay, so I'm going to get us right into this, but I wanted to offer some apologies for Oke Madueke, who who was meant to join us. You would have seen her name in the agenda, and she had a last minute personal crisis that needed to be attended to right away. So unfortunately, she won't be able to join us. And we wish her well, and we'll check upon her after this session. Nkiru, I just wanted a quick housekeeping. Will Kwaku still be joining us?
He's apparently on his way, so we'll see. I guess you can introduce him, and if he joins, he will just join.
Okay, so in sticking with the agenda, I'm going to introduce Kwaku, who will be joining us as soon as possible. Kwaku Bediako is Ghanaian and is the creative director and founder of Chocolate Clothing, a Ghanaian fashion brand which draws inspiration from the rich African culture, lifestyle, tastes, and preferences. He is a winner of Ghana's Designer of the Year 2018-2019. He has exhibited in various global fashion shows, including the Paris Fashion Week and showcase of the Paris Peace Forum. In November 2018, he participated in a showcase banquet held by the President of Ghana in honor of Prince Charles and the Duchess of Cornwall during their 5-day state visit. Kwaku has dressed celebrities including Steve Harvey, Boris Kodjoe, Cardi B, Danny Glover, Jamie Foxx, Colin Kaepernick, T.I., Danny Glover, Jidena, and Jack Dorsey, founder of Twitter, to name a few. So Kwaku will be joining us during the course of this session. So I'm gonna jump right in, and Eryca, I'm gonna start with you. And obviously we want this discussion to be as interactive as possible, because with the different personalities that we have here, we all have so much to say and contribute to this conversation regarding soft power, harnessing Africa's soft power within the African context. So Eryca, I'll start with you. As you know, COVID has wreaked havoc on many industries, but others, in spite of the suffering that many industries have suffered, such as travel, the stock market, banking, finance, et cetera, people's jobs have been on the line. At the same time, you've seen that others have thrived with the opportunity in the change in pace with the way the world is right now. So I would just like to deep dive into beauty specifically, especially within the African beauty context, if you can speak to that. How can African beauty adapt and innovate? How do you think just based on your observations that African beauty has adapted and innovated. And I'm partial to this, obviously, because, you know, I'm partial to the beauty industry. So we'll have to start this conversation with beauty. So Eryca.
Okay, thank you very much. You're absolutely right. The beauty industry has been sabotaged because it's a physical industry, especially face-to-face when you do, you know,
Service.
the service, facials, nails. In the UK, which is where I am right now, the beauty industry, the makeup industry literally just went back last week.
Wow.
I know from people that I know around the world that they are suffering immensely. People have to become innovative. COVID is real, and it doesn't just stop because the markets are opening. Now, there are some people that are not engaging in the rules that have been set by particular governments around the world. And I know that there were lots of people practicing services behind closed doors. One of the things that I do say to people globally, especially in the UK and in Africa, is that it's not just going to go away. And I know at least 10 organizations that went back to market, not just in the UK, but in the US and a couple of countries in Africa. They have had no clients. One of the reasons is because people have learned to do things at home themselves, and they're starting to see the results themselves, and they're happy with the results. Qualification, education is really important. And I find a lot of people now are looking to pursue further interests and gain more knowledge within the beauty industry. And what I say to people, no matter where you are, and particularly if you're in Africa, is to learn about the business of the beauty industry.
Exactly.
Because as you quite rightly know, anyone, no disrespect to makeup artists, because I am a makeup artist formerly, but anyone can be a makeup artist. But now you have to be very creative in the space.
More than that.
And very innovative. Find a new USP about yourself and put yourself up. There are so many people on Instagram that are makeup artists, but I literally believe that's where it's going to stop. If you are not business-minded, if you're not conscious of COVID, and your clients don't see that you're actually practicing what needs to be done within that arena. So, and I don't think it's just Africa specific, I think it's global, but you're going to see a new generation of people born because of COVID.
But can you also speak to the business side from the product perspective? So you've heard the concept of the lipstick effect, which was coined by Estee Lauder, which is that with other global or economic downturns or economic crisis, whether it's a downturn in the market or devaluation or what have you, the lipstick business had actually thrived. You know, would see dumbfounding sales figures during a time of economic crisis. So now there's been a lot of conversation around, well, is the lipstick effect now a skincare effect or a hair care effect? Because manufacturers of skincare products, hair care products, they've had a surge in business. You know, even makeup products. You know, if you look at the eyes and upwards, because we're wearing masks, so lipstick business for the first time ever in any economic crisis has actually suffered. You know, so less people are wearing lipstick. There's nowhere to go. People have been stuck at home for almost 6 months. So can you talk more on the product side of that and what you're thinking around that? Because that side of the beauty industry is thriving. From Africa to the States and back.
Okay, two things. I'll let you into a little bit of an industry secret.
Okay.
One of the things that I've heard is that a lot of manufacturers are looking at lipstick with long-lasting staying power that doesn't come off in a mask.
On a mask.
There's quite a few brands that have actually exercised this, and their sales have gone up immensely. The other thing that I find, because you know, beauty follows behind fashion. There's fashion, there's beauty. What I'm finding and what I'm hearing a lot more now is that women, they were heading for the cloth mask, but now they're going for the vaser, the plastic vaser, so that they can wear lipstick. So there's going to be a turnaround. There's going to be a surge in the lipstick industry. But what I've actually heard speaking to a few developers is that the staying power is going to change within the lipstick formula. But there's going to be another surge. But you're absolutely right. Through previous wars, lipstick has been the one product that has sold indulgence. Even so much so that if I remember correctly, in the last war, lipstick was used to create lines down the back of your legs so that it looked as if you were wearing stockings. So lipstick always had a double end use. But yeah, so that's where the product manufacturers are going to really create staying power for lipsticks.
Okay, fantastic.
I'd like to jump in here.
I'd love for you to do that, Jameel.
Okay, thank you. I think what we're seeing right now is probably the biggest pivot of all time. The CEO of Shopify came out a couple months ago and said that the 10-year projected online e-commerce sales had happened in the last 10 weeks. And so while a lot of people are suffering, people are buying a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And when people are buying a lot of stuff, it basically creates a new market. If you're able to pivot and provide people with something that they're willing to purchase, you can do well. Absolutely. And so, even in the fashion space, I think when this first hit, there were a bunch of brands, manufacturers who were actually now manufacturing masks because masks were hard to come by in the beginning. Right. So a lot of people made a shitload of money off of selling masks, right? And so I think that, when you talk about soft power, right? And that's really like the global connective impact that we have as a people. We are the kings of the pivot, right? We know how to figure out ways to sell you anything, that the notion of, selling water to a whale, right? And so if you think about that, and if you think about what I do, right? So when I talk about helping people monetize underexploited revenue potential, it's, if you're someone who sells makeup, how do you sell them something that is a part of makeup occasions? So for instance, if there was a mask that, that did not come off, your lipstick didn't come off, right? That would be an amazing pivot for someone selling makeup. And that's really what it comes down to. So we are only limited by our creativity, and we are the most creative people on the planet. And so, you're going to see a lot of people who struggle. Those are people that have a hard time changing their perspective, sort of stuck in their ways, if you will. But you're going to see a bunch of young folks really successful because they don't understand limitations at all. They don't even know what you're talking about. They're like, oh, we're not doing that. Okay, then how do I give you this instead? And that's really, one of the sort of the, natural resources we have as a people. We are the kings of the pivot.
And based on
kings and queens.
Thank you.
I like that. And based on that, actually, Jameel, I was gonna, that's a perfect segue into the next question that I had. And I had that for you. So COVID-19 has permanently altered the marketing landscape for fashion and beauty industries. Just as you were just saying, and particularly fashion, from development to how brands connect with customers now. Fashion weeks have either changed or have been canceled, from Paris to New York to Lagos. All the fashion weeks that was scheduled for this year didn't happen. And we've seen some interesting things online with digital shows or digital human beings and digital models. Tongoro, a brand based out of Senegal that did a lot of clothing for Beyonce's last visual album, for example. She did a fashion show that was based on sort of like computer generated images walking down a runway, which went viral. So because of this change, how do you suggest that brands connect with customers going forward? And also just the way our lifestyle has changed. So people are pivoting to more lounge chic sort of wear versus, corseted wear, et cetera. So from a business perspective, how are you, based on what you just said about the pivot, how do you think?
Well, I think it's probably three things. I think it's, how you reach them, what you're going to sell them, and then in some ways, like how you make them feel, right? So like Supreme just, did a whole ad campaign with Cat Williams, and he's basically talking about like all the craziness going on politically here in the United States.
Right.
Literally, I mean, he actually looked crazy in the clothing because I think that's what Cat Williams does. I think that's his look, right? But he's not selling you anything, but it's tapping into how he makes you feel. He makes you feel as if the brand is on the right side of culture, and for the folks who control the impact, he's one of us, right? And so that's how he make you feel. In terms of how you sell people things, that was already changing, quite honestly. Retail stores are struggling at an all-time high. This just exaggerated that, right? This is just sped that up, because the reality is, and this is
Barney's has gone out of business.
American thing. We are overstored.
Chapter 11.
Yeah. We're overstored here, right? There's way too many stores for the amount of people that we have. And so that was going to go through some attrition naturally. And then the ability to reach people digitally has become more and more important. So that's why things that typically happened in the past in terms of having 2 huge ad campaigns a year, and putting out content, easily, that doesn't work anymore, because you have to be continually messaging to your customers. And so that's sort of how you reach them. And then what do you sell them, right? Do you have the ability to make your brand come to life in a number of ways that are not only different than your main business, but timely? And so you talk about, people are wearing a lot more loungewear because I don't know. It's funny. I make the joke to my wife all the time. I haven't had on pants in the last 4 months. I've worn shorts every single day for the last 4 months. And so, a lot of that, there are brands who sell that particular type of clothing who are doing better than most, better than they would have ever done in the past because of what they're selling. And do brands have the ability to pivot and make different things that are a little bit more on the pulse of the moment that we're living in?
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you for that.
I just had my trusty assistant come in just to make sure I keep it pleasant. So we're gonna
cheers to you. It's Saturday after all.
It's my birthday on Thursday.
Oh, happy birthday in advance.
Happy birthday, brother.
Happy birthday.
On that note, so Chid, over to you next. Manufacturing and distribution are key issues for fashion brands in Africa, as you know very well. In addition to the Chinese infiltration, for cheaper production levels have bottomed out the market. And this has been going on for a couple of decades, but I'd say a lot more intensely over the last 10, 15. How will the Africa fashion industry, from textile mills to local manufacturing, survive this oversaturation of Chinese exports into our markets? From Mokala market in Ghana, to Cotonou, to Lomé, to Senegal, to Balogun market here in Lagos. You have the battle of, Vlisco fabric, which is 10 times more expensive than High Target, which is from China, similar design, does okay in a washing machine, etc. And then, the way this also feeds into how local designers, feed this into their pricing from a quality and affordability point of view as well. So can you speak to that? Because, you've been involved in something really interesting along those lines.
Yeah, thank you again so much for having me. And I just want to say, basically everything Jameel said, that's why he's one of my mentors and gurus. I want to double down on that because I thought that was just brilliant. What I'll say is basically, first and foremost, as Africans, let the Chinese be the Chinese. Let them have that. We ain't trying to be Canal Street. Okay. We have always had the most amazing amount of creativity coming from our continent. You just talked about Tangara Studios. We can talk about Brima and Studio 189. We have so many amazing designers that, as Jameel was talking about, they're just not monetized correctly. We get so excited when Virgil or when Rihanna gets signed by LVMH. Why aren't we owning LVMH and making that into an African organization and a permanent source of capital, so that when a designer really starts to break globally, we own that. We own that ourselves, and that money then gets reinvested in Africa. Why aren't we looking up the sort of food chain to African high arts? Why aren't we getting Kehinde Wiley as a creative director for a fashion house? Let's not care. The Chinese are always going to copy everybody. That's what they do. They copy you in technology. They copy you in engineering. They copy you in fashion. Let them own that. I don't think that we ever want to take Africa there. What we got from day one is our creativity, our spirit. And what there's never been, I don't believe, on our continent. Because as you know, the most important African fashion companies are owned by Europeans or by other folks. So what we've never had was a Black-owned company like a LVMH, like a Caring Group, that could actually harness the power of real African creativity. We see what happened with Nollywood. We see what's going on with Afrobeats. Fashion is the same. It's not about us trying to be what America is doing or trying to be what this, we're our own thing. Exactly. And my bet is that the whole world wants what we're on. So like, let's keep being on what we're on, and let's like really harness the value of that and make a couple $2 billion off of that.
So what
my wife is clapping, so you know.
So what is, I mean that's a really profound statement, and it speaks to the core of this soft power topic that we're trying to bring to life. So what are some of the next steps that you see with them? I mean, this is a perfect pivot into the $190 million AfriExim facility that you were just part of to acquire this major textile group. So how do you see that playing out across the field, and then to the average design house, and then maybe a conglomerate after that?
Great. I mean, first and foremost, I think you're 100% right. It really comes down to capital. We can talk about all this stuff and all the creatives and all this stuff. If they don't have real access to capital and access to market, it doesn't matter. And that's, to me, where so many great African companies get lost. Is it's hard to be, I think, an African small business. I actually think that Sarah and Tongoro Studio is doing such a great job at like growing at the right speed. But truthfully, for things to work on our continent, because it is complex, Nigeria is a complex market on its own. And then you talk about Liberia, South Africa. You notice I put Liberia on the same level as South Africa, Nigeria, and Kenya. But you know, I'm loyal, I'm patriotic. So the big thing there is that it's so complex that it's hard to do with small amounts of capital. And that was a little bit of why Kojo and I, when we started talking, you know, I've been running factories in Liberia, I've been servicing brands, I've been a major exporter. In fact, the first real value-added exporter out of Liberia into the United States and into Europe. So I knew what it was like to be out there struggling and hustling. You got a couple $1 million of capital, a couple $1 million of revenue, and it's just hard to make something happen. And when Kojo and I really started talking about partnering, we started to realize that what this moment really needed was a lot of capital. You know, when we talk about harnessing our soft power, you know, Hollywood isn't Hollywood because somebody put in $1 million. It's these are $1 billion investments. And I think that sometimes because they're creative, people get scared and they're like, well, what am I really investing in? You know, an oil well, I understand what I'm investing in. There's an off-taker, it's very simple. And Africans, quite frankly, as people are very risk averse. We're pretty actually conservative when it comes to capital. So to me, it's really about transforming our mindset. If you can't sit back right now and look at the success of Nollywood, look at the success of our music industry, all the things that we have been doing, and realize that, and then also look at Africans in the United States and in Europe, and look at the industries where we over-index. Look at the places where we have Jameel Spencer's, Rich Dennis's, beauty, fashion, art, music, film. So if you just like, I'm a big like Thomas Sowell fan, and I love like how culture sort of influences. So if our culture naturally excels in these areas. And I'm going to add banking in there because you know my Naijas can bank. I'll give you guys that. So we know that we over-index in these industries. So now, how do we get billions of dollars of capital into those industries? And for me, that has to do with making really great returns. And I think that for me, when we shaped Made in Africa and what we want to build there, it was like, okay, how can we show somebody how to take a couple $100 million investing in African creative industries and turn that into a few billion? And I think once you see those examples happen, you're going to have more and more capital chasing opportunities in Africa.
Exactly. And just to buttress on that point.
Agrees again.
We love a
Miss Africa. She was Miss Africa. So
we love a cheerleader in the background. And just to buttress on that point, I think the time is also, just with this evolution that you see happening with Afrobeats. I tried very hard not to talk about music on this, but in the past week, we've seen a Burna, we've seen Tiwa, we've seen Fireboy, we've seen these guys release globally acclaimed, Spotify acclaimed, Apple Music acclaimed albums back to back to back, right? You're having the New York Times write about this, et cetera, et cetera. So on one angle, you can say Africa's time is now. And I just keep wondering that on the, when it comes to beauty and fashion, why aren't we able to replicate the birth of a brand that got birthed in Africa that now has global acclaim? Like you have, Shiseido was birthed in Japan and we're all using it across the world. You have all these brands that, were birthed in different parts of the world and they're now global brands. And I think it's time now, how do we get investors to get comfortable investing in African brands that have the potential to have global acclaim?
Yeah, wonderful.
Beat the horse a little bit more.
No, I think that you're 100% right. And what I'll say is that this isn't just a moment, it's a movement. Like this is no short-term trend. This is what is going to be for the rest of the world. I literally am looking out when we talk, and Jameel has helped us shape a lot of this strategy, but when we talk about Made in Africa, this is not your typical private equity 4 to 7 year window. We're talking about another 100, 200 years out. And that's really having the long-term thinking. And if you really think that the French people created luxury, if you really think that the Romans and the Italians created luxury, wait until they see the things that we've been doing in our cultures for thousands of years. Like we created all of this stuff. And so at the end of the day, now you're right, it takes time. And I mean, this is why we wanted to work with geniuses like Jameel. It takes time to create those brands and to have those brands become meaningful. And Africa as a brand right now, you're totally right. In this moment, it's becoming really meaningful. People are like, oh, I always go back to the first time, Daban told the story about the first time he played his music for Kanye, and Kanye was like, wait, you produced this? He just couldn't fathom how the production was so hot and like he'd never heard of these producers. So like this is gonna happen in every creative industry, every single one, hands down. And I'll kind of go back to the capital point. What I love about capital, you can say, I mean, I'm the first one to admit, capital is biased. We usually have old white men deciding how capital is deployed in the world, and that's really, really real. That being said, once we get over that, the truth is money just loves more money. So as soon as we start to show them, I mean, Bernard Arnault is on it. You think it's weird that Bernard Arnault's last 2 major announcements for a creative director have been Black folks, have been a Ghanaian and a Barbados, both living in America? Bernard understands where the future of creativity is going to come from. He knows what's hot. He's listening to kids. He pays people millions of dollars to listen to young kids tell him what's dope. And what they're telling him about is like Ghanaian immigrants living in Chicago and singers and other people doing cool beauty products. So like we're about to unleash a massive, massive wave here. And all we gotta do is stop playing around on the small levels. You're a nice little shop, that's great. These are great small businesses, but we need real, serious business people. I'm just going to my brother Jameel because I know him. I don't know you as well, Eryca. I'm sure you've done some super dope stuff too, but people who have built multi-billion-dollar brands to now come help us build those coming from the African continent. And once we do that, trust me, you have so much capital that will be chasing African creativity that we won't know what to do with it. Whack people are going to start getting deals, as we saw in hip hop a long time ago.
I couldn't agree with you more. We can go on and on about this, but I'll pivot to Kwaku just a little bit. Kwaku, thanks for joining us.
Hey, how you doing? So sorry, I was in the shop and there was so many clients here. I was trying to,
Good problem. Good problem.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Jameel.
What's up, brother?
So I've already done the intro of your bio, so our audience is aware of your background. So I'll just throw this to you real quick, especially if we drill it down to your personal experience as a fashion designer and a brand owner and in a physical store. You know, you have traditional retail and brick and mortar businesses that must now have a strong online presence and use tech and AI where possible to drive business. You know, so considering issues around data limitations in Africa, for example, which is the common, corporate excuse or economic excuse, and also the lack of trust of the average African consumer regarding making a payment online, not being able to eyeball a garment, to touch and feel, not trusting that the size that the designer says it is will fit me when I get it online. You know, I'm forever having these skeptical conversations with online designers. I'm like, okay, I'm a size UK 12, but when it gets here, it fits like an 8. So do you have a return policy, etc.? You know, it's, even those designers are having issues catching on to what, consumers' new expectations are. So how do African fashion brands like yours or like you stay ahead of the curve now going forward and not fall to the wayside?
Right. Thank you so much for this platform. I think, it's a very interesting question. A couple of years ago, I had a conversation with a friend of mine who had lived in the States most part of his life and South Africa just before he moved to Ghana. And he said to me once that our biggest problem in Africa, or for most of us designers in Africa, is sizing. If you take a look at most our morphology, our physical attributes, it's very, very different from the rest of the world, right? And so, in our case, what we did a couple of years ago when I started this business was to call it a lot of data. Okay, so I have almost close to, if I'm not exaggerating, more than 1 million measurements in our database.
Wow.
Where we've been just analyzing it over the years. And so for the last 3-4 years, most of our orders, for example, that come through whether Facebook, Instagram, phone calls, and quite recently our e-commerce, which we are going to be launching in some few days. But gave the opportunity to others to have a look at it from the back end. But it's been almost a 99% success story in terms of the fit because of data analysis. So I think speaking from experience, my experience will always go back to the numbers. Numbers don't lie. If you're able to analyze a solid data of, let's say, 1,000 clients, let's say in East Africa, and so you're able to then use by relativity this let's say client A's shoulders is probably similar to client B. But anyways, this is what we've been doing over the years, and I can confidently say that even most of the celebrities that we ended up making clothes for, and we're blessed to have as our clients, 99% of them, we couldn't take their measurements. So we had to use the same routes in analyzing their measurements online. And when they came through and they wore the stuff, it fitted like gloves. So I guess my first out of experience will be analyzing your data. Okay. Now, the second problem which we have is, I think in Africa, there's a big problem with credibility. A lot of business, yeah, so I'm going to explain. So unlike the West, their structures is based on a credit system. So by default, there's a lot of trust in there. You come to Africa and everything is cash and carry. And so think about, I mean, this part of my personal struggle is, how do we come out with an e-commerce platform where we're going to get people to come and buy stuff and then be open to returns?
Okay.
I don't know if you get, so it's part of our challenge here. Everything gets paid in cash and it's leaving. Nobody wants to go through that whole system of, let's say, having a credit system. So these are all things that we are now trying to infuse into our line of business. Your last speaker made mention, or he made a reference to building long-term luxury brands. He is so right. I'm not thinking 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. The conversation is how are brands currently springing, all these brands that are springing up, all brands like ours that are now doing well globally. We need to have a 20-year plan, okay? And then analyze brands that have made it, and then try and figure out, okay, what was their route? How similar, how can we draw a correlation between similar structures they put in place that can aid us? How's the markets different? How can we add, or how can we subtract this? How can we relate to X and then bring it to our market? It's going to all take time.
Yeah, but quickly, let me jump in and ask you this.
No, for sure.
Do you feel that African designers are truly ready for a big time? And let me just explain this question, right? As a full-figured African girl, I know what my size is in H&M, at Zara, at Theory, at Cause. I know what my size is.
Okay.
I don't have to think about it. I'll order it, no issues. If the item comes and there's an issue, I know there's no issue with me returning it. With an African designer, right? Isn't it time that they invest, that you guys invest in standardized sizing? I know in Africa, we like to customize what we wear, we like one-off pieces, et cetera, et cetera. But in terms of when you think of a larger consumer population, shouldn't the investing in sizing and standardized sizing be a priority in a policy that supports exchanges and returns? The average African designer, once you purchase, you're not allowed to take it back and return. Okay, so I understand you don't want me to return, but I would like to exchange it for a bigger or smaller size because I ordered it online and it didn't fit the way I'd like it to fit. And I see this as a colossal problem across the spectrum, give or take a few designers here and there. So I just wonder, are African designers really ready for this big time? Like Kwaku for H&M, right? Is what we should be looking at. H&M just did a collaboration with a South African designer that over here, is huge fashion enthusiasts here in West Africa. I'd never heard of her before, but she did a collaboration with H&M. Joanna Ortiz did a collaboration with H&M. Isn't it time for a Kwaku to do a collaboration with an H&M, or a Lisa Folario to do a collaboration with H&M, or an Audio, or some of these, or Christy Brown, So, there are steps that need to be built to then make these mega relationships happen. So what, from your perspective as a member of that community, that fashion community, what's lacking?
No, I mean, you're totally right. I think I did highlight some of the problems in my, in my first delivery. I feel like, let me even give the year of return as an example. And this just goes back to buttress your point. There's a lot of, the industry has never really been taken that serious. Okay, you have someone like me who read science and probably left the science field to get into fashion and lifestyle. And everybody's looking at you like, what the hell is wrong with you? Okay, the system has never really pushed and supported people like me, whether or not we read science or we read the arts, and now we've actually gotten into this market. And so it's recent times that brands like chocolate will, let's say, skyrocket into the world because of XYZ reasons. But the question here is, how many people are thinking the way I'm thinking? How many brands will want to attach a business aspect to the entertaining aspect you're doing? Okay, you ask 80% of musicians, even in Ghana, whether or not they have a solid team behind them, and they don't. Most of them just concentrate on the music, forgetting that the industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, which needs a lot of structures, policies, etc. And even for us as chocolate, it was still just 2018 that we were given the opportunity to really start structuring our business the way it is now. And so I feel like, just to buttress your point in, are we really ready? And my answer is, we need to start taking our industry more serious. We need to start understanding that it goes beyond just making of clothes. We need to start taking sizing as an issue. We need to start taking the accounting aspects really serious. We need to start taking PR very serious. All these sectors I've mentioned has never been part of this industry. And as a matter of fact, we've never really even had a full-blown industry that probably sets itself apart or ready to get certain grants or setting guidance, So I personally, I feel like it's going to take time, but a lot of brands, like even chocolate, deserves, or we need to have more and more support, not monetary necessarily, but support in terms of how can we build an industry for ourselves, and in that industry that we're building, attract more hands to come on board to support us in terms of PR, support us in terms of accounting, in terms of business development. This is literally what would then cause that ripple effect, and then have, let's say, a Kwaku going to emerge with a Saks or a Harrods, for that matter, because then all the structures needed, all the processes that we need to conform to, we would have done that. Otherwise, the system here really has a lot to do. We have a lot to do here.
It's a tough system. I agree with you. Thank you. Thank you for that. I'm going to swing back to beauty. So Eryca, I'm going to swing back to you. On that note, do you feel that African beauty brands are viable on the continent? You'll find that there are certain African beauty brands that are popular within certain countries, right? How do you see this viability across shores? You spent a lot of time in Africa, loads of time in Nigeria. What's your view on consumer and economic, and their economic tasks and power in this regard? Affordability is a huge issue. So how do you feel that local brands that need to cross the borders can handle the issue of quality and affordability at the same time? And again, here we have the China problem, right? but what's your view? What's your view on that?
Okay, my view on that is I don't think there's enough communication. I don't think enough brands are speaking to one another. I think there's too much competitiveness. So going back to your brand in particular, when your bio was read out, I was absolutely amazed. And I think personally, someone like yourself should be used as an example to show what can be done. Slightly moving away from the question, one of the things that I'm dying to say is that I think too many people out of Africa want the recognition in the diaspora. But also you've got lots of brands in the diaspora catering for African skin types. And there are so many different types that know nothing or don't know that much, I should say, and are doing very well. So I think the industry needs experts like yourself with such comprehensive knowledge, whether it be from a Nigerian perspective, whether it be from a Ghanaian perspective, because different skin types, different countries have different skin types. And this all boils down to the food that we eat. So I think collectively, I don't think we come together as one enough. I don't think we speak to each other enough. I don't think people really understand the science behind the beauty industry, even the makeup industry. So psychologically for me, I get very frustrated here in London, catering for the needs for women of color, diversity. I had to go to Africa, as you quite rightly said, spend more time in Nigeria because that's where my heart is, to understand the African, the Nigerian perspective. I am Jamaican, my parents are from Jamaica, and I've always felt lost in the beauty, well, actually as an individual, but as a grown-up person in the beauty industry. And I've said this wherever I go in the world until I actually went to Nigeria and I got to understand the psychic behind the Nigerian woman, who I feel is one of the most influential women in the beauty industry.
Huge beauty enthusiast.
Yeah. I say the most in the world that I've ever seen. However, I don't think enough people are speaking to one another. So having someone like yourself, obviously I know of you, I know about your brand and I know what you've accomplished, but I think brands like yourself should be leading the way and narrating the conversations to up and coming brands and on a global perspective as well.
So Obi just said in the comments that we're not doing a great job with cross-marketing. Do you feel that that's an issue? I would say yes. That cross-marketing.
I would say yes as well.
It's certainly an issue, even though social media is changing that. But what would you say about that regarding cross-marketing? African.
In Africa. Well, okay, I don't think, as I said before, I don't think we are speaking to each other. There's too much competition. We don't understand one another. And people just look upon skin as skin. So obviously you do skincare. I come from a makeup perspective. And I just feel that people think one hat, everyone can wear one hat, everyone can use one product, everyone can use one makeup range. But there are over 85 different skin types. There are over 100 different skin tones. So there's enough there for everyone if they were to communicate and understand where each other was coming from, understand the makeup of the African woman. And I don't literally mean the application, I mean the makeup of the African woman.
You know, that actually leads me to my next question. You know, if you're paying attention to the beauty conversation globally right now, the big word is inclusion. You know, from Fenty, inclusion, right? 50 shades for everybody from the darkest skin tone to the whitest skin tone, etc. You have a lot of brands that jumped on that bandwagon to do the same thing. And I've always thought that, you know, would it be so wrong for an African brand or an African focused brand to focus on exclusion, where you focus on the diverse skin tones or hair textures or what have you of the African woman, whether it's from Morocco all the way down to Mali, all the way down to the bottom of Lesotho or what have you, where it's exclusive to this demographic. because, do you think brands should be bold enough to come out to do more of that going forward and make a global name for themselves by being exclusive to an African descended skin tone or hair texture or what have you? Exclusive, not inclusive, because I feel my controversial take on this is that the average white girl has a zillion options for shampoo, for makeup, for foundation, for lipstick, a zillion, literally. So now, if I come about as an African brand to focus on, not just Black, but the spectrum of, whether mixed race to the darkest skin tone, and focus on that and want to make that $1 billion impact, is there an opportunity for this? And if so, why isn't anybody doing that?
Okay.
Yes.
Feel free to jump in on this, please.
I'm sorry, Eryca.
Can I just answer that very quickly?
Ladies first.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you so much. I want to say that I don't know why it's not being done. However,
it's like brands are afraid to be exclusive.
There was one brand in particular that I know did that, and they did it very, very well up until a few years ago, which is Fashion Fair, but out of the US, not, aimed at the Black woman. However, I don't know why people are afraid, but it's very unauthentic when the mainstream brands are doing what they call diversity and the colors don't match. They're very muddy. I'm talking about makeup. The undertones are not correct. They're just doing it for the sake of doing it, but they're exploiting that. So I don't know why enough makeup brands do not feel confident enough to just do that, because the spectrum, as I said, for Black skin is over 85 different tones. And most people are not aware of that. So I think it's all about education, confidence, and understanding business. Over to you, Jameel. You were going to say.
Please add to this.
So I think the short answer is yes. I think the reality is that it has happened. It's happened in the States over and over again. Essence,
Yes.
BET, in the beauty industry, there's 50 examples, right? And this is interesting because Chid and I actually had an argument once, and now I'm sitting here and realizing he's right, and I hate when that happens. Right. Because I think what happens is we build these businesses and then we exit them. And then when we exit them, they're no longer Black owned. And when they're no longer Black owned, they're no longer important to us anymore. And not to say that exiting businesses is a negative thing. That's a good thing, right? That's part of capitalism. That's what you want to do. But LVMH is hundreds of years of, right? And so like if Jay-Z stayed an owner of Rockaware still to this day, you can't tell me that it wouldn't be super successful, because Jay is the most powerful rapper or whatever you want to call him, right? He's more powerful today than he was when he started Rockaware.
Absolutely.
And so it has happened. I think the challenge is, and really the answer to changing our soft power to real power is, how do we have equity in these things that we build? We tend to give the equity away. We are super creative, but maybe not always the most business minded. And so we get really excited about being creative. And if some white guy comes up to us and says, "I'll pay for you to be creative," we give it all away, and we don't own hardly any of it. But the biggest part is like, how do we, because our creativity and all of those things, that's our instinct, right? So how do we make the transition from instinct to intention, right? Intention was some French guy going to Egypt and blowing the nose off of the pharaoh's face on the pyramids, because he didn't want people to understand how powerful and creative and how our engineering sense was better than anyone. So they were intentional around making it so that at this exact moment, we still are not clear about who we are, right? And then the bigger part is, how do we connect ourselves globally as one people? Because we come up with so many ways to separate ourselves. So someone will tell you that Cardi B is not African. We all came from the same place. They were just stops on the slave ship. That's all the difference, the only difference there was, right? And so once we understand, and then more importantly, find a way to utilize our collective power as a people, it's over. It's over. And that's what you're seeing right now here in America, is that these old white men are concerned. The jig is up, right? And even now, young white kids who don't have the generational racism towards Black people that their parents had. So they're now in the streets walking around with Black Lives Matters banners, right? And on T-shirts, you see, I'm in the Hamptons right now. I never seen so many white folks wearing Black Lives Matters. I'm like, what movie am I in right now? And so, you know, that's a fear that old white men have always had. That once people just start judging people as people, and once love, which is undefeated, by the way, right? So once you see the sharing of cultures, people marrying each other from different cultures because love is love, and I just love what I love, right? And now it gives birth to these beautiful brown and just colorful children who will absolutely change the world. And so that's really what we have to do. We have to figure out how to own our culture, stop giving that shit away, right? And then take advantage of our impact. Give it to people like Kwaku. He deserves. We should be celebrating him. We should be buying his stuff over these other brands. Don't care about us. The family that he's going to raise, the people that's going to meet his kids, and all that whole thing. That has value to me. I don't know the white guy that runs whatever brand. You know, the guy from whatever it is. Right? I don't know him like that. Actually, I do, but I care about us more.
Do you want to jump in on that before I go?
I'm just happy that my mentor said that I was right about something. Y'all don't know how historic this is. He
stopped paying attention. He stopped paying attention when I said he was right.
This is like when Luke Skywalker found out. I'm just kidding. Nah, brother. Everything you said was just spot on. And you know, anyways, just to finish this off, I also want to say that we want to make sure that we create those ladders for entrepreneurs like Kwaku, who are so extremely talented, to now be on the level and the league where they can get real capital, real distribution, real marketing, where they can afford to have somebody like Jameel marketing them and bringing them to market. Like that's where everybody needs to be. Like, you know, it's really having the infrastructure. We can make fun of Kanye all we want, but I always go back to that interview he had with Sway, when Sway was like, but Kanye, you're a millionaire, you're one of the biggest rappers, why don't you just do it on your own? And he was like, I need infrastructure. Plain and simple, we got the creativity. Let's create the infrastructure so that we can grow it and dwarf all these little European organizations. They ain't gonna be nothing in 100 years. We got it.
You know, that's a really, really great point. And I'm going to, and that's a perfect segue into my next question. And I'm going to point that to both you, Chid, and Jameel. You know, in the last few months, we've had, you know, this global ricochet around Black Lives Matter, Pull Up or Shut Up, which is founded by a fellow beauty entrepreneur who's actually originally Nigerian as well. By Black, by woman owned. And it's really interesting how over here in Africa, we felt the impact of that. Beyond us watching what was going on the news, we, you know, as Black businesses or African businesses here, we felt the impact of that. For example, with my brand, we got picked up by GQ magazine. We got listed on, you know, because a lot of the magazines were doing, you know, lists on Black brands to check out, Black brands you didn't know existed, etc. We got listed in GQ, we got listed in Cosmo magazine, etc. And we had all this engagement all of a sudden that we weren't quite ready for. But then the other thing that I noticed was that this spurned a huge online uproar and conversation where people were suddenly finding out that Cantu is not Black owned, you know. So it became the war between, you know, Black owned versus Black founded, but no longer Black owned, right? So you have Carol's Daughter, for example, one of my favorite brands by Lisa Price that was acquired by L'Oreal. All of a sudden, you know, you saw this huge population that didn't realize that Carol's Daughter was now a L'Oreal brand, or Shea Moisture, one of the biggest Black, well, probably the biggest Black acquisition, Black-owned beauty acquisition so far. 1.6
for sure, yeah, 1.6 billion
with Unilever, and all of a sudden everybody was up in arms that it was no longer Black-owned. And then, all these bigger brands had to come out to give statements about, well, we're Black founded, we're still behind the brand, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, you had this global conversation happening. And so my feeling is that the truth behind that is, if 5 years down the line and Estee Lauder came to me and wanted to acquire me for a couple $100 million, I would be flattered by that. But that this movement started making me feel that why are there no Black conglomerates acquiring these companies? Because it's an honor to create something, I can tell you, and then have it acquired by someone else, and you have the freedom as a creative to go on and create something else. But now we really have to think about, first of all, you don't want to be that brand that's not dreaming about an acquisition, that's not dreaming about a merger, because when you're trying to raise capital, you kind of have to have the story for a potential investor, et cetera, et cetera. But then you now have this movement having us rethinking that. So I'm happy for you or Jameel to jump in and take that, because we felt it here. I felt it here in all the way here in Nigeria. And I know you guys in the States were living it every day, but it was a huge conversation. People were just, and I was surprised at how surprised people were that certain brands were no longer Black owned.
Without a doubt. I think those of us who are, I'm a business geek. Like I love business. I love entrepreneurship. I read case studies, and I'm checking for, who's owning, and I see what M&A deals are happening, especially for Black brands and Black entrepreneurs, because obviously, I'm lucky enough to know many of them, but also just I'm really interested. If I could eventually teach a course on Black business history, I'd love to do that. So I think for those of us who are really paying attention, we understand when these transactions happen. But if you're a casual person, who reads the trades? Who's reading this stuff? So if you're a casual person, you're buying a product, it's only usually when something then negative happens that you start to get this information, and Black Twitter sort of starts going off about this, and look at their marketing director, blah, 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 and then everybody sort of starts to pile on. And I think that to be honest with you, my position is that we gotta be fair. I do think, as sort of Jameel alluded to, and as you were saying, the real power is for us to start creating, whether it's through raising like Kojo and I just did, but large sources of Black permanent capital that we can acquire companies. So yeah, I don't want you to sell to Estee. I want you to sell to me.
My other question is, we don't have a shortage of Black billionaires across the globe, from Africa to the US. We don't have a shortage of Black billionaires. Why don't we have Black billionaires or African billionaires putting their money, a couple billions, behind conglomerates or structures and infrastructure, as you called it, that can acquire some of these brands?
Anyway, listen, I don't want to get too controversial. My brother, Rich Lou Dennis did it. He sold Shea Moisture, as you mentioned. He went right away and bought Essence as a platform. He single-handedly doubled the number of Black women who have raised more than $1 million in the world in 1 year. So people are doing it. But I think that actually gets to another point, is, as I said earlier, Africans, like myself, my own family, we're conservative people. And so it's hard when you, let's say, make $1 billion in banking, and you're starting to figure out your next steps. It's not like you live in Silicon Valley, where every day you're meeting with small entrepreneurs coming out of college and they have cool ideas for you and you're writing $50,000 checks. That, as somebody who comes from Silicon Valley, that's a Silicon Valley thing. That's like a New York and a Boston thing. That's not a Nigeria thing. That's not like, because the risk adjusted return in Nigeria is so tough for people who are running small businesses. So, but if you really look at Africa, the people who are moving capital, let's look at what our boys at Helios just did with their big transaction. Let's look at all the large funds that are run by Africans and the new sort of crop of African billionaires are coming. Like, doing large deals in Africa works. It provides returns. And so what we need to do, we've actually had a lot of success talking to the African billionaires about our transaction. Why? Everybody knows the brand. Everybody understands we already have a lot of distribution. Everybody knows it already has hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue. So it's not hard to imagine how we take that and do the things that we want to do. I think sometimes when we go to these billionaires, you can imagine, listen, Tony Alumelu, great guy trying to help entrepreneurship. How many cousins does Tony Alumelu have that need money? I mean, we're all African. So it's hard for us to start to distinguish, you know, what's a real business with a lot of potential and what is just, you know, somebody talking. We need to create an entire ecosystem that allows for people to start making those types of investments. And my whole point is, let's start big and move down. Once you have the people like Tony Alumelu, like Richlu, who've invested in transactions like Kojo and mine, people like Kojo and myself who are now investing in the Kwakus, now we're starting to build an ecosystem. Like, we understand. It's hard for somebody who's all the way out here to be talking about, to remember what it's like when he was selling shea butter out on the street. So, and like, especially on a different continent, it's hard for him to be there to mentor you and to tell you, nah, man, don't spend that on marketing right now. Spend that on your supply chain. Your market is good. So let's start just by building the ecosystem. And most of all, let's start really big permanent sources of capital that are devoted to this type of industry. This is the next industry that's coming up. Right now, all the guys like Helios and whatever are making money off of hard power, right? Oil, gas, cell phone towers, blah, blah, blah. This is now the thing that's coming up for everybody. So now we need a Helios of creativity, of film, of Nollywood. Now we need a Helios of fashion. Now we need a Helios of beauty. And then, like you said, when you come up with your brand, it's not selling to Estee Lauder, it's selling to your Nigerian equivalent of LVMH. That's something proud. And everybody still feels like the heritage, the love, everything is still baked into the brand. That's what we think needs to happen next.
I love that. I couldn't agree more. But Jameel, I need you to jump in on this. You know, with these movements, you know, the Black Lives Matter, the pull up or shut up movement, where, you know, a lot of the big brands were challenged to talk about their policies around Black brands, you know, the big stores, you know, not carrying or giving enough shelf space to Black brands, et cetera, et cetera. How do you think African fashion and beauty brands and entrepreneurs here, with Black entrepreneurs and brands on the other side, how can we strategically leverage these powerful movements so that everybody wins? You know, I mean, I have some distinct ideas, but I'd love to get your view on this based on your unique career and business positioning in the US.
So
you're right.
What you're referencing generally is like this, you know, the cancel culture, right? Like the folks that are going to call out the fact that there's not an adequate amount of representation of Black folks in management positions in buildings like a Nike, where it makes no sense because the majority of both the talent that compel people to buy and the people buying are Black people, right? And so, but you know, that change is not an easy change to be made, because when you have, you know, this generational sort of pandemic that is racism, right? You know, people are very difficult to give away power. Some of these people don't even realize that the power that they have is undeserved. They really believe that it's them. And so I think that, you know, I'm a big believer in not cancel culture, but counsel culture, You know, how do we have the right conversations with
Council
the right
culture,
people?
did you call it?
Council culture, yes. So how do we take this this moment that we're in and have conversations that sort of start to right the wrongs, you know? And so I think there needs to be a combination of the things that Chid is doing in terms of building his own and building something for us, something that would be ultimately positioned to invest in and show these emerging Black businesses how to be successful and give them the necessary capital to do that. But also we got to have, like, you know, the people inside those walls too that ascend to the roles that they deserve. And so what you're seeing now as a reaction to that is a bunch of folks who have been in those walls forever, who have been doing their thing. They've been creating impact, but they've been, you know, looked over, right? They weren't, because it was more important for someone to give their friend a job or the guy that's been with them for 25 years an opportunity when they know that the new young Black kid is the one getting it done. And so now you're seeing, you know, a lot more of folks of color, you know, emerging to higher ranking positions. But in terms of like that conversation between Africans in America, it's funny. I once, just recently actually, I created this thing called Fashion House for Essence. In the midst of it, I went across the street to get lunch, and it was a young brother, African brother. He was at the event. He was doing the same thing, like having a drink or whatever. And I said to him that I'm African. And he was so offended that me, as a Black man from Newark, New Jersey, considered myself African. And I told him that you know, I loved him too much to continue this argument, so we can agree to disagree. But it's undeniable that I'm African. And so, but that's the result of like the biggest crime of all time. And people are still living in that. And so how do we create, like, you know, we are the most amazing marketers in the world, right? So how do we create the marketing campaign that connects us? You see the results of it. So you guys talked about, you know, Afro beats. We talk about these things. You see the results of it, right? And by the way, it feels very natural, right? It's not a difficult thing to make the connection to, because it's actually who we are. But this country, America, was built on something so negative that is unsustainable. And so we are living in the beginning of the reaction to that negativity. And so how do we create this connection in terms of sharing resources, information, impact, whatever it is, right? It took an Ebro or the Ebro Darton of whatever radio station across the country here in America to be unapologetically Black around putting Afro beats on Hot 97 for Afro beats to become as successful as it became here, right? There was some work that had to happen, some connectivity that had to happen. So how do we continue that work and be intentional? And there's two words that are really, really important here: unapologetic and intentional, right? How do we become unapologetically Black to the point where we are no longer concerned what anyone else thinks about us, because all we need is us, right? And then be intentional around using that to connect us in a way that, by the way, we may not see the results of in our lifetime, but like have the confidence and the love for your children, right? For your children to want to see that for them, and for maybe for your children's children. And so I think that you know, we got to build that bridge. And that's why, by the way, it's funny because when you guys reach out to me about doing this, you had me at Africa. I'm showing up for anything African all day, because we need that, man. And it's a shame that this, you know, 20-something-year-old African brother was literally upset with me that I considered myself. I was like, wow, I am literally watching the results of the biggest crime of all time. I'm living it right now here with my brother, my young brother, who, by the way, should love the fact. I went to Chid's wedding. Sister asked me where I was from, and it was the first time in my life that I was embarrassed not to know. That it was the first time in my life that Newark, New Jersey wasn't the right answer. Because how the hell am I from Newark, New Jersey, right? It's not even possible. And so, you know, we need that connectivity to the diaspora in a way that it's responsible, because I'm sure everyone here is old enough. Maybe not you, Kwaku, because you younger, and maybe the crew, you maybe but us, we listen. We are all old enough to remember having like uncomfortable conversations between African Americans and Africans, like crazy things that if your kids said today, you literally. I don't know if you guys are still beating guys. My kids are older. I don't beat anymore, but I used to. Just for the record, I would give my kids a beating if they said the stuff that we said as kids about Africans. Right? Mm-hmm. I would feel like a bad parent, like I haven't done my job. And so like that's what we need, man. We got to build the bridge.
And on this topic of building a bridge, I want to continue this thought on that, because it's obvious, but I also feel that in order to build soft power at this stage, we need to collaborate, right? There's a huge, powerful African diaspora out there. And beyond the diaspora, there's the extended diaspora out there. And again, because I'm such a huge music fan, but recently, Diddy, produced, was one of the producers in Burna's album that just came out last week, and there, all I could see there was collaboration from Lekki in Lagos to Diddy in Hamptons. And they did that over a COVID period, collaborated, and Diddy was able to bring his experience and his network and what have you, and help to create this fantastic piece of art. And I would love to see us doing this within consumer goods, within beauty, within fashion as well. So and this question is for everybody else. How can we harness this collaboration in order to make this soft power really, really happen, for beauty and fashion? Sid, I don't know if you want to jump in on that. I think I've lost Jameel. Jameel, did you hear my question?
No, I heard you say something about Puff, but I did hear so how do we leverage the collaboration between African Americans?
So what I was saying was, to build soft power, you have to, you can't do it without collaboration. It has to be done via collaboration, right? We have a huge African diaspora out there. Within that diaspora, we have a huge extended diaspora, which you've just spoken on now. And then the example I gave was the recent collaboration between Diddy on Burna's new album. Burna was in Lagos, in Lekki, which is a neighborhood here in Lekki. It was a neighborhood here in Lagos, collaborating with Puffy in New York, with Diddy in New York, on a piece, on this album that became a beautiful piece of art, global acclaim, right? Puffy brings his experience, Burna brings his talent, and you have this magic that happens. For me, this is a fantastic example of soft power. This is a fantastic example of building on diaspora, cross-diaspora relationships, right? So how can we replicate this collaboration with African beauty brands, African fashion brands, with diaspora brands that are, that have access to capital or access to a freer market, so to speak, to create the same things? Because we have some amazing brands and fashion houses doing amazing things over here.
Well, so I think that what you're referencing just generally is like marketing 101, right? Like, I have an audience, you have an audience. How do we find the intersection of those audience to create a new audience or a bigger audience? So, and that's happened throughout time with all types of collaboration. And music is probably the most obvious place that happens. But when even Drake probably got more credit than he deserved for the explosion of Afro beats. But he did play a role, right? And and I think instinct is that you make the type of music that touches your soul, and it's sort of a communication of who you are. I think intention is, Jay will tell you the story that when he made this song with the brothers from Houston, with Bun B, when they made the song, they didn't want to make the song because they were like, Houston cats ain't like New Yorkers, right? They thought New Yorkers were obnoxious. They're probably right. But they didn't like New Yorkers, right? But Bun B had the vision, the intention of saying, but my man has the attention of the entire world right now. If we connect with him, like there's this notion of, you know, high tides raises all boats. And so I think that we have to be intentional. We have to realize that like sometimes, and by the way, intention is sometimes expensive, right? Like if I'm somebody who has an audience, but I know that if I'm going to leverage my audience for someone that maybe is not as big as I am today, I think Drake does an amazing job of that in general, right? I'm not going to charge this guy what I would charge someone else. You got to make it affordable for the collaboration too. So sometimes you might have to take less to do more if it's for your people. Like we have to change the perception of currency too within our community. And I think that we need to know more about capital. So we need to be smarter about the stuff that Chid is talking about, but we also need to be more thoughtful around the impact, because, you know, we give this impact to brands for people that have people that don't look anything like us running them. We give it away, right? Like I was at the meeting at Red Rooster with the CEO of Gucci and Dapper Dan. Right? And in my mind, I drove myself there in my car and I heard the word Gucci on the radio 100 times, and not one person got paid a dime for saying that name. And so when you get to this conversation around, well, why would they do this to us? Well, they did it because they don't even know. We're not even on their radar because they're so used to just taking our impact for free that it's, you know, it's an old saying, why buy the milk if you can get it for free, if the cow's giving it away for free, right? And so, you know, we gotta, so why is it okay for us to give that impact away to people that are not for us, by us, but when it comes to doing something for us, we want to hold them hostage. Oh no, I can't be on that. I gotta, right? And it's because we're broken as a people. Like we see the connectivity to them as validation for ourselves. Someone asked a question about, you made the reference around, you know, Kwaku doing something with H&M, and it's an interesting question, because I, as a marketer and as a business person, can absolutely see the value in the distribution, the volume, the impact, the marketing dollars, all of the things that would go into a collaboration of that type of sort, right? But it is kind of a shame that he has to do that to get what he deserves, but it's not the worst thing in the world. And so, you know, how do we get to a place where we're just being a little bit more intentional around connecting and seeing the value in that, and really changing the notion of currency as it pertains to, you know, those moments when the people at the top in terms of impact, the Jay-Z's, the Burna Boy, all of the guys we talked about, all of these guys, right, feel a little bit better about giving that away to people that look, talk, dress, have kids like them. That's when we're on the verge of converting what is being referred to as soft power to real power, not hard power, real power. Because we have it, we haven't chosen to exercise it in the way necessary to realize it.
Fantastic. So I'm just gonna, thank you for that, Jameel.
Sorry, I wanted to input something in here.
Half a minute to input.
A minute?
We're running out of time.
Sure. I think, okay, so I'm going to speak from even here in Africa, a perspective from even here in Africa. We find it even so difficult to do collaborations here in Africa. I mean, let alone even now start talking about doing collaborations in the States. You know, so I mean, my contribution to this topic is we need to learn to stop to think that we are constantly in competition. You know, the pie is big enough, and we need to also notice that the only way we can get global, get to that global status that we all want to, is agreeing to the fact that we need to work together. And I think that's the first thing we all need to learn. And as soon as we're able to understand that, I mean, 80% of our global strides has been, it's never been my blackface. No, it's been tons of like-minded people coming together and then always seeing, okay, hey, where can we push chocolate? Okay, where can we push Kwaku? And today we have what we have. So we need to be open to that.
Fantastic contribution, Kwaku. Really, really good points, because local collaboration is also a big topic and big avenue for us here in Africa. Eryca, just real quick, you were featured in the Skin documentary by Beverly Naya, and which touched on beauty standards from lightening creams to plastic surgery, et cetera, and to sort of like influencer influencing the standards of beauty, right here from Lagos to Kinshasa and back. We know it's a huge topic here, and there's discrimination on both sides, whether you're darker skinned or you're lighter skinned or even albino. There's discrimination across the board. So I wanted you to just quickly, I don't know if you can fit that into 1.5 minutes. Can you tell us how thinking around this standard of beauty today, because that documentary caused a lot of, or should I say generated a lot of conversation around this topic from both sides, to light-skinned people feeling that, they are being discriminated against because they're light-skinned, whereas you have a darker-skinned or darker-hued woman feeling that, you don't understand my struggle type of thing. So if you could talk about that. And, just to quickly add to this, L'Oreal is removing the word whitening from all their products. Johnson & Johnson is discontinuing Fair and White, which has been a huge brand here in Africa. P&G Beauty, they're doing the same thing, either changing the wording on the labeling. But don't you think, and the lightening industry is $1 billion industry across Africa. Do you feel that the consumers who make this happen will find other underground ways to still find their product? And doesn't this also sort of, from a business perspective, give an opportunity to underground brands to thrive and still continue to perpetuate this issue?
That's a huge
1.5.
That's a huge question.
I'll give you 2 minutes. I'll borrow you. I'll borrow you an extra 50 seconds.
Thank you so much indeed. Right, back to the initial question. Yes, I was featured in the Netflix Skin, and it was done 2 years ago. Now I'm a 56-year-old woman. What I described at the time, thank you. What I described at the time is how I felt growing up in the UK. I had lack of self-esteem, and as I said earlier, I didn't know where I belonged. So I'd go to the Caribbean, they'd call me this. I'd be in England, they'd call me that. I'd go to America, they'd call me this. The only place I ever felt like I belonged was when I came to Africa, and more in particular Nigeria, which is why I was able to express myself the way that I did. However, growing up in the UK, I felt ugly. I had a lack of self-esteem. I didn't know who I was. As I said, psychologically, I was damaged, but it's another story for another day. As for brands, the mainstream brands changing the words, the product will still do the same thing. And answering your other question very quickly, I'm trying to remember it all. People will still buy what people want, wherever they can get it, wherever they can obtain it, no matter how it's packaged. I went to the doctors as a young girl, pretended that I had acne problems to get a steroid cream because I didn't like the black that I lived in. So it's a deep, and I won't swear, but it's deep stuff that starts from us, the environment, the people that we surround ourselves, and how we feel about ourselves. So I had to go to Nigeria to feel, recognize, understand who I am and what I am, and talk about my problems to other Nigerian women that made me feel that it was okay to be me. So I hope that answers your question. And that was the most comprehensive answer I've ever had to put together so quickly.
One of the commentators said you asked a 5-minute question and you want a 1.5 minute response. Dr. Kole Odu. I'm sorry. So on that note, thank you very much, all the panelists. Thank you, Jameel. Thank you, Chid. Thank you, Kwaku. Thank you, Eryca. Thank you, Nkiru and Obi, for this opportunity to moderate this panel. Like I said to you, it's, you know, these are huge topics that you wanted me to squeeze into a toothpaste tube in just an hour and a half. So I really, really thank you for your contributions, your insights, and I'm hoping that this conversation that we had will generate some real life examples that we've talked about here sooner rather than later. Thank you very much. So I'll hand this over back to Nkiru, and I'll let you wrap it up.
Toyin, thank you so much. This was excellent. Thanks to all our guests. This was amazing. We're really grateful to have you all. We can't wait for the next time when we meet and sort of like expand on the topic. Thanks so much. And we got to round up now and close to the day because people have to do other things. Very, very grateful for everybody who was here. Obi, do you want to say something very quickly?
Yeah, I just thought it was an incredible panel, very positive. We really want to thank Jameel for the perspective he brought to the table, because I think, you know, everybody, you know, we're very business focused on the continent and everybody wants to come to you to talk about the business. Wonderful moderation. Eryca, as always, thank you. Kwaku, good to see you on the panel and good luck with your brand. And yeah, you can pay me a commission. I'll connect you to Jameel and we can make it pop. Well, listen, let's do this thing. Let's build. I agree. It was a great day, man. I wish I was in the Hamptons, but we're in Lagos.
Just for the record, I'm on my way to Richelieu's house right now, which we also known as Fantasy Island. So I'll be over there enjoying.
Tell him we said hi. Nick says hi. He should come and invest.
And you guys, you're all invited to Ghana, man. Anytime you come to Ghana, let me know. Let me host you guys, okay?
Yeah.
Thanks, Kwaku.
All right, guys.
Let's build.
Bye. Ciao. God bless.
All right, bye. All right.
No, you're still on. People can still see you. Why haven't we shut this? Africa Soft Power, can you shut down, please?